What's going on, everybody? This is Sean of Raw Select Music, and today I'm finally getting to that record that I've been talking about. And that record would be The Stark Reality Discovers the Hoagy Carmichael's Music Shop. I've been talking about this record a lot since the start of the new year, ever since I picked it up and showed it off in a recent record pickups vlog. Then I talked about it in my Now Again Label Love video. And I also talked about it a little bit on my Raw Select radio show, which if you haven't checked it out, you can check that out over on my Mixcloud page and my D-Sound page. Links, as always, are in the description, so you can check those out whenever you want. Long story short, I absolutely love this album, and probably for the next few minutes or so, I'm basically just going to lump praise upon praise onto this record. So, spoiler alert for anybody who doesn't watch more than a minute of these videos, I fucking love this album. It is a Now Again essential. If you're a jazz head, if you're a funk head, if you're a weird music head, if you meet any of that criteria, this is a record that you need in your collection. And I'd like to tell you why I think this is possibly going to become one of my favorite albums of all time. So, with that out of the way, let's get into this obscure record that probably no one cares about, but why you probably should care about this record. So I didn't do a whole lot of research of the backstory behind this record. What I do sort of know is Hoagy Carmichael was a musical composer slash singer who used to have a television show or has appeared on American television, and he had an album that was released sometime in the 1950s called The Hoagy Carmichael's Music Shop, and they're essentially songs for children. And essentially what the Stark Reality did was take those compositions and basically turn them on their head and turn them into Stark Reality compositions. So that element of sort of childishness and something that would appeal to children is still there, but I really can't imagine any child, whether it be in the 1970s or now, want to listen to this record. Because while the lyricism, which I'll get into a little bit later in the video, may have some childish appeal, the musicianship on here is probably going to terrify most children. But terrifying children aside, there's really a lot to love about this record. And I think one of the big things for me is how many genres it mashes together and makes them work. Much like a lot of the records that I talk about on this channel, there's a mashup of jazz, rock, psychedelic, funk, soul, a little bit of pop, a little bit of children's music, and they all come together so brilliantly. None of it feels like one desperate genre and another are clashing against each other. It really, all of these genres come together and help create a very unique and original sound for Stark Reality. Now, it's pretty cool in and of itself that these guys mix up so many music genres and bring them together to create a pretty unique sound for themselves. But where I think they elevate themselves to a position where I think they should get a lot more respect and praise than they really do is how fantastic these guys are as musicians. From their guitarist John Abercrombie, their bassist Phil Morrison, sorry I did have to look, Vinnie Johnson on drums, Monty Stark on vibes. Everybody on this record is an absolutely insane musician. Whether it's the sort of psychedelic guitar flourishes that John Abercrombie brings on guitar, the sort of proto-Primus bass slapping insanity that's Philip Morris on bass, or I'm gonna have to look at his name, Vinnie Johnston's absolutely funky, swing heavy, sometimes hard hitting, sometimes super jazzy drumming, and Monty Stark bringing his own sort of uniqueness to the vibe, sometimes bringing a real clean and pretty typical jazzy vibe sound to their music, but sometimes bringing them into absolute overdrive and making them gritty, distorted, nasty sounding vibes. Everyone on here brings something to the table and brings an interesting texture, or an interesting mood, or an interesting musical flourish to the mix. And everybody stands out individually as a player, but everybody also comes together and becomes basically an inseparable part of this musical puzzle. But great musicianship does not always equate to essential listening. There's no shortage of spiritual jazz and jazz fusion records that are out there with some of the highest quality musicianship you will ever hear. And the majority of those records, I just can't get into them. But the Stark Reality somehow do this great job of having high, top-tier musicianship that goes into the realm of challenging music, but also makes it still palatable for the average listener. But what would I know? I don't know what the average listener is listening to these days. Gucci gang, Gucci gang, Gucci gang. But speaking of jazz, it seems like the majority of these songs on here are structured like a jazz track, where you'll have maybe an introduction that leads into a main hook or verse that will lead into a short to extended improv part, and that will either go into an outro or will go back into the main hook. Or sometimes the song will start on the improvisational part and then move into the hook before it closes out. So it really does seem like more so than rock or pop, despite the fact that these elements do pop up in these songs. And don't get me wrong, some of these songs on here are actually really, really catchy. That the majority of these songs on here follow a jazz structure rather than a traditional pop song. And I think just for me, that's why I like a lot of the music on here. I also have to talk about the lyrical content on here, because I really think that Monty Stark's vocal contribution and lyrical contribution to this record are really what help keep it from becoming a snobby, sort of pretentious jazz record, and really give it a sense of playfulness that you don't really associate with jazz music. A good example of some of the sort of innocent, childlike lyricism that goes on here is one of my standout favorite tracks from here, which is Grandfather Clock, in the way that he details it being sort of a member of the household. Or another highlight on here, which is actually the track before it, Dreams, which is sort of the child's dream account of all the things that he can be in his head until he is rudely awakened. And it's just these sort of playful stories and sort of, again, innocent approach to songwriting that you normally wouldn't associate with a jazz record that really make it such a fun record to listen to. It also helps that Monty Stark, by no stretch of the imagination, is a great singer, but he fits the mood of this music perfectly. And that's always been my number one complaint with a lot of singers, that they don't complement the music, that they just seemingly stand out for the sake of promoting themselves to the forefront, where I feel like the most important thing that a vocalist should do is really play a complementary part to the music. And Monty Stark does a perfect job of that. But not only does it seem like Monty Stark's having a lot of fun, it really seems like everybody on this record's having a lot of fun. These jams just feel so joyful, so full of playfulness and a lack of pretension that you don't really get with records like this. And the moments where they really do come together hit so perfectly. They know when to keep it funky, they know when to keep it psychedelic, they know when to really come together as a unit, they know when to pull back and let certain instruments speak more than others. This is some masterclass musicianship on here, but it never feels like it's thumbing its nose at the listener. It really almost feels like it's inviting the listener to enjoy in the musical madness that's going on this record. And I think that's just one of the elements, or one of the many elements, or one of the many reasons, rather, that I absolutely love this record. I don't know what else to say about this record. It's musically challenging with some top-notch musicianship, but it's also playful, a joy to listen to. It's jazzy, it's funky, it's a little bit psyche, it's a little bit unpredictable, but it's also extremely catchy. It does everything that I look for in music, and that's probably why for the last 2 weeks I've been listening to it on basically non-stop repeat. Now, in terms of flaws, I don't really think there are any. I think maybe the one little quibble that I have with this record is it can sometimes, depending on the mood that I'm in, not so much the record itself, but the mood I'm in, can be a little bit monotonous if you're listening to it from front to back over the hour and 30-minute duration of this record, which is actually a good... It now is a good opportunity to tell you that I am listening to the 2015 Now Again reissue of this record, where they screwed with the sequencing of it and also added some tracks that weren't originally on the original double LP release. So I'm still going by my feelings of the 2015 reissue, not the original record. And while sort of piecing it together in my head, I do understand why some people think that the original track listing, or track sequencing rather, is better. I am approaching this record as it was put out in the 2015 reissue. I'm still okay with it. I do find that, again, sometimes that sort of towards the middle, it can wear on me a little bit, but by around the time Comrades kicks back in and All You Need to Make Music, I'm back in love with this record. So yeah, as far as any real negative complaints about it, I don't really have a whole lot. So at the end of the day, if you're looking for a jazzy, funk, psychedelic record that's musically exceptional, that's really creative, and just a joy to listen to, The Stark Reality discovers the Hoagy Carmichael's Music Shop. I can't recommend this enough. And if you're looking for an essential record from Now Again's extensive reissue catalog, then yeah, pick up Cold Heat, because this record is absolutely essential. But if you're going to pick up another record other than Cold Heat, you should get The Stark Reality discovers the Hoagy Carmichael's Music Shop. So that's going to be it for me today. Thanks as always for watching. Go into the description and head over to my WordPress or Steemit blog, because that's where I put the musical links, so you can check out any time that I talk about a record in a review or a recent record pickup. That's where I put all the music links. You can also check out during the week, I post individual tracks that have caught my ear, and you can keep up with some of the other underground music that I've been getting into as of late through that. As well, make sure you head over to my Mixcloud or D-Sound, which is Steemit's SoundCloud knockoff, where you can check out my DJ mixes and the Raw Select radio show if you prefer just hearing some of the music that I'm talking about rather than watching a full YouTube video about it. You can check out the audio portion of the Raw Select music brand. Yeah, I'm going to call it a brand at this point. I also want to say, hit me up in the comments because I know one guy whose username, unfortunately, is not coming to me right now, but you know who you are. He was the original person who hipped me to the fact that the 2015 reissue has a different track sequencing than the original release. I want to know from people like him, anyone else who's listened to this record, who prefer the original release of this record and the original track sequencing, why do you think the original track sequencing is better than the 2015 reissue? Or just in general, if you thought I was a little bit, I went a little bit overboard with my praise for this record, or if you agree with me, just hit me up in the comments. I love talking to you guys. So yeah, thanks again. Hope you liked this review. Definitely more on the way. Hopefully I can keep to a regular upload schedule. And I'll say peace out and see you in the next video.